It's amazing how conditioned we are to place our faith in material things. And I think that's partly understandable for two reasons. The first is that we have come out of an age that has been perhaps dominated by that mechanistic thinking, whereby it's very much, what you can see, feel, and touch is real, and everything else is just a dream. The irony is the other way around. But I think also the fact that we are very sensory, especially with our sight. We are a species that is very dominated by or dependent on our sight of vision. So our ability to actually physically see something helps the brain go, that's real. And if we can't see it, then it's not real. And yet, for me, over the past couple of years, with the uncertainty, the growing complexity in our world, I have started to realize how futile it is to place your faith in the things that you can see. And yet it's very easy to do that. Sometimes I find myself sort of thinking about, how much money there is in the bank, how much business is coming in. And if there's a lot of business in the pipeline, a lot of business coming in, or a lot of money in the bank, then it's like, cool, I feel certain. But what I'm practicing now is to develop the ability to place that sense of certainty not in what I can see and perceive, but in the belief that, or the knowing is a better word, in the knowing that what I need will show up when I need it. And so it's a level of faith that becomes a knowing. It's like when you're walking, you don't have to have faith you don't have faith that your foot is going to hit the ground. It's a knowing. You just know it. And I think that's a level of faith. It's a very strong, deep level of faith. But now what guides us? And I think here again, so for me, inspiration, all right? And I've spoken about it a lot. Inspiration, in spirit. It's got a lot to do, the root meaning of it has got a lot to do with a presence of the divine. But what is inspiration? Because I always like to understand these things on a practical level. And inspiration is really a signal. It's a divine signal. That's how I would describe it. It's a divine signal that when you're in a state of clarity and you are tuned into your intuition, which is often requires us to tune out of our senses, the five senses at least, and tune into that intuitive sense, that sixth sense. And it's that feeling of just absolute knowing. I know this is, I would say, it's a combination of a feeling of knowing and clarity. You might have experienced this where there's a decision that you've got to make, and suddenly it's so clear. And you just know it's the right decision, or it could be an action. And that is when we have received that divine signal, that inspired signal. But what gets in the way of that inspired signal is busyness, because when we are so outwardly focused, we tune out of of our inner world, and the inner world is where our intuition sits. The inner world is where we receive that divine signal. So when we are so tuned into the outside world, we become fixated on the material, and that's when we start to place our sense of certainty in external things. If you think about the biblical story of feeding the 5,000, and you don't have to be religious or Christian to take a lot of wisdom from the story, but Jesus there were 5,000 people that showed up, and there wasn't enough food, but one little boy had, I think it was 12 loaves and about 5 fish or something like that. And everybody ate, and there was still left over. Now, you might think, well, how is that possible? Well, I don't know about you, but I've had this experience where And I actually had this experience this year where money came in. Well, I was in a very tight situation financially and wondering how I was going to ever have enough to pay the bills and all the commitments that were coming up. But by just letting go and surrendering the control. So surrender doesn't mean give up, doesn't mean let go, it doesn't mean not let go, doesn't mean resign yourself to it. It just means let go of control of the outcome, but then do the inspired work. That's the key piece. Surrender is not passive, it's active. And so what I did was I thought, all right, I can't control the outcome of this. And whatever the outcome is, I will accept that. But what I am going to do is what I can control, and that is how I engage and participate in life. And so I got stuck in and I followed my sense of enthusiasm, because I think that's a good beacon sometimes. Where do you feel expansive? It's not an emotion. It's an energy. It's a state of energy. It's a state of expansiveness. And I did things that felt that the enthusiasm was most intense. And then, a couple of months down the line, I'm thinking, how did that money that came in go this far? And I'm reminded of that story. And it's amazing when we let go of our ego's illusion that we're in control. If you stop thinking that it's your cleverness, if you stop thinking that it's it's the activity, it's the work you did, well done, look what you did, amazing. No, stop that. It's not what you did. Yes, you played a part in it because you participated and you co-created it, but a lot of it you didn't control. And if you are taking the credit for these things, if you are trying to control everything, then you're not going to feed the 5,000. and then what happens is your attention gets placed on the things that you've got to do to try and keep this thing together, things you've got to do to try and fix this situation, the things that you've got to do to find a solution. And your attention gets drawn into the outside world too much. And then what happens is you tune out of the inside world where your intuition is needed to receive that divine signal of inspiration. And we've actually got to it's counterintuitive, because when stuff needs to happen, things aren't in a good place. Like the knee-jerk response is go out there, do more, get stuck in. And that might be needed, but not without the inspiration behind it. And so what we've got to train ourselves to do, and this is what I'm working very hard at, is slow down, step back. Remember that clarity is more important than busyness, because it's in your state of clarity that you receive the signal, and the signal is clear. It's like a radio station. It's stop trying to turn the volume up and down, tune into the station. Okay, that disturbance is because you're not tuned in. And what happens so often is we are acting out of a state of disturbance. We're anxious, we're fearful, we overwhelmed, we tired, we exhausted, and we're acting out of that triggered, disturbed internal state. That's like trying to listen to the news broadcast on the radio when you haven't tuned in, and you're hearing the fuzzy voice in the background, but you can't hear what they're saying. When we're not tuned in to our intuition through clarity, a quiet mind, not a disturbed state, then we don't receive that divine signal, which is what I call inspiration. And when we get that divine signal, sometimes it might mean you've got to get out there and get things done and do things, but you're acting from that divine, you're acting out of that clarity and out of that divinely inspired state or signal. So the last thought maybe is, next time you feel overwhelmed, fearful, anxious, or any of those emotions, and you start wanting to go out and do more, just pause for a second and prioritize clarity. Prioritize the state you're in. Can you let go of those triggered states and bring about calm clarity on the inside? That doesn't mean to say everything around you becomes calm, but you're operating out of a state of calmness. And when you're in a state of calmness, clarity happens. And from that clarity, inspiration flows.